Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. Ken did his best on Tuesday to get our Astros out of the first round of the playoffs. If you didn't get the chance to see the game, if you're not a sports fan, Ken sang the national anthem, and it was nationally televised. So he was being the ambassador of light. It was incredible. And I don't know that I'm ready to talk anymore about the Astros. I'll get there. But you know, I am going to say this. They started off not great, and they ended up winning the division and making the playoffs for 7 years in a row. And I think there is a spiritual lesson there. We don't have to be limited by what has come before. That principle is not bound by precedent. That there is always a brighter tomorrow. Okay, I guess I was ready to talk about the Astros. What I'd like to do right now is just to have... As Howard mentioned, there were over 3,000 individual contributors to the financial good that became this sanctuary, but there were also teams and committees, and there were so many people in the staff. So what I'd like to do right now is invite anyone who was a part of or contributing to in any way the building of this sanctuary to please stand and let us say thank you to you. It's the people. Just like Howard said, it's the people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our board secretary, Sheila Blake, she formerly ran the permitting department at City of Houston, and I tell her she's really not very good at retirement. She is always busy doing so many projects here and other places around the city with causes she believes in. She shared a story with me, I think with Howard too, that I wanted to just talk about this idea of how we move forward when we don't really kind of see how this is going to work. Years ago, she was having a meeting with some colleagues and who were also in that whole construction permitting world. I don't really understand what it was you do or did, but you're wonderful. I know that. And one of your colleagues was from Washington who attended Unity there, and then another is a Persian, and he is a Baha'i, which is a beautiful, beautiful faith. And as Sheila and Bauman were talking, there was just this idea of like, oh, that's very much what we teach. Well, then Sheila said, I got to go. There's a meeting at my church to see if we're going to build a new sanctuary. And she came over to the meeting, and she said that during the meeting, people were like, how are we going to do this? How is this possible? The money is just, that seems like, and I don't know if this is when we thought it was going to be $3 million or not, but it was like there was a feeling like, is this going to happen? Can we do this? And then Sheila said there was a voice that she recognized coming from the back of the room with a slight accent who was saying, you must do this. And she turned around to see her Baha'i friend, Bauman Yaznadi. He was there, and he was saying, he was just sharing what he had been observing. The meaning, you see, it turns out Sheila had left her day timer at the dinner, and he was bringing it back to her. But he was caught up in the vision of what was happening from our leadership, that something beautiful wanted to happen, and he spoke to it. And he spoke about this building being a beacon of light in the city of Houston. And he's here today. Would you stand now so we can just welcome you, Bauman Yaznadi. And Sheila said after Bauman spoke, the energy just changed. Just changed. And that's really what it's about for us, that we don't know how we're going to do it because we haven't done it before. But if we can begin to feel an opening, then we can develop our path of freedom. One of our members supplies me with little funnies from the internet, and I always like to start there just because I enjoy it that way. You know, a lot of married people that complain that their partner doesn't listen to them. I've never heard my spouse say that. And I thought this one was good too. I don't think I'm bossy, I'm just aggressively helpful. I see people going, I think he's talking about me. I have a short message today. We have so many other wonderful things in our celebration, but I do want to share a few ideas. If you've never been a part of our Touchstone program, it's a 6-week spiritual deepening program we do in the fall. We've been doing it for years now. And we have this beautiful banner. We select a theme. And our theme this year is the path of freedom, being, becoming, and belonging. And those are our 3 value statements that we live by here at Unity. And so we're going to take 2 weeks on each of the ideas that those words hold for us. And today, for part 1, what I hope to do is give us the philosophical and spiritual grounding that we have in unity. Our being statement says, we live from our oneness with God and each other, experiencing abundance and connection with all life. You know, unity is not just a word. It's not just good branding, which it is. It's actually our theological statement that we see God as everywhere present, including in all people. And that's a bold statement to make. In this time of division, in this time of blame and criticizing and judging, and, you know, it's like if they would get it together, we'd be fine. Have anybody ever had that thought running through your head, that the problem is them? I shared last week that, you know, I was on 59, and I never think about anybody else being individual people. They're just in my way. I'm the one that's got something going on here, but it's never true that this light that we've been speaking of today, the light of the world, the light of God, it's in every person. And so what I hope to do today is, as I said, ground us in this truth so we can find a different way of standing, a different way of understanding who we are in the world, who everyone else is in the world. And then next week, I want to give us some practices that will help guide us back to living from our oneness with God and each other. So there are a couple things I want to say about this, but I'm going to let Eric Butterworth speak first. He's one of our legendary Unity ministers. He passed away several years ago, but founded several large communities and wrote many books. And this is what he says. You can never be separated from God because you are an expression of God, the very self-livingness of God. God cannot forsake you any more than gravity can forsake you. As an expression of God, you are God expressing himself as you, and your greatest desire should be to let Spirit have its way. Meister Eckhart had this feeling when he said that God only expects one thing of you, and that is that you should stop thinking of yourself as a created being, and let God be God in you. That's big. In John 8:32, Jesus said, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And our dear friend Mary Morrissey, who was Howard's prayer partner for many, many years, and she's how I got here. She introduced me to Howard at a retreat in Montana in 2008, I think, and that's how I ended up getting. But Mary is really wonderful. But she has this thing she says, if you've taken Prosperity Plus, you know this. She said, people think that they know something because they've heard the words before. And so you'll be presented with a spiritual principle like living from our oneness with God, experiencing abundance, living in connection. You think, oh, I know that. But she says, unless your life fully embodies and demonstrates that truth, you don't know it. You know about it. And so these spiritual principles of oneness, of living as though we believe it, because it is coming from our deepest, most inner truth that we are living. When we see people, we treat them as though they are an expression of God, just like I am, instead of somebody who's in my way or someone who's voting for a different party. That we must commit to it. And Jesus said, when we know it deep within us, when we're living from it, from that knowledge, then we are different. And what did he say happens to if you know the truth, and it will what? Set you free. And isn't that what we're all looking for? All of us have false beliefs, limited ideas of who we are, what the world is, the way it all works, that keep us bound, that keep us small, that keep us from living the life of freedom and fullness and wholeness and abundance. It keeps us from it. And so what we're seeking is freedom from anything that isn't true. I had this idea, like as a metaphor, and I've never used this before, but I'm going to try it out. And then if y'all don't like it, I will never use it again, I promise. There is a light within us, as I said in the meditation, and it's always there, but we're not always aware because our awareness is on the problem. Our awareness is out here on these other things. Our awareness is looking at all of our flaws. We can't see the beautiful truth of us. So it's almost like this. Whether you are a sighted person, when you are a sighted person, you still have the opportunity to walk into a room and turn off the lights. And then you will have the same experience as a person who doesn't have sight, right? And you could just close your eyes and you could try to navigate your life with your eyes closed. The light is still there. You're just not seeing it. And think about the freedom that comes when you open your eyes and you can make, oh, that's where I put my keys. That is what we do, or very much like what we do. When we think it's all on our shoulders, when we think that I've got to figure this thing out or I'm just going to die like those poor ministers who built buildings. I'm just not going to be able to get through this. I can't do it. When we're in that thinking, we've got to open our inner eyes to see that we are fully resourced, that we are living from our oneness with God. And remember, if you don't like that word God because somebody told you things about God that don't agree with what you think God ought to be, I'm not talking about that God they told you about. I'm talking about the creator, creation, creative process, all that is known and unknown, all that is hidden and seen, and the light of potentiality that bursts forth into all created things. And it is in you. This desire for God to be itself in a new and never before seen creative way, just like this was an idea. This building was an idea, and then God said, yes, I'm going to pour myself into that idea through Howard Caesar and through all the 3,000 people that contributed, to all the board members, all the architects, every single person God expressed through it, and here it is. We're in it. This is the way of creation. And it wants to happen to you forever. It wants to happen through you forever. But we have to open our eyes. But sometimes, what's that, the three monkeys? We do that. Am I really God expressing as me? Is that really what I am? That's big. And I'm tired. I don't know that I have the energy to be that today. And it's not about the doing. It's about the being. And what happens when we don't live from our oneness, when we have our eyes closed and we're not seeing the spiritual truth of God's presence and power and creativity right here and right now? We live in judgment. We live in separation. We live in isolation. We live in fear. Is that a place we want to set up camp? But how many of us have been there? And let's be honest, how many of us have been, and at least, some of you haven't. Wow. You're going to get the talk next week. No, we do. We all close our eyes from time to time and don't see the truth of who we are and what God is. But when we return to that truth of that light within, then judgment has no place to live. Separation has no place to live in that. And so we begin to see it differently, and then the being that we are has greater freedom to express as who we are in everything, in our jobs, in our relationships, in our finances, in our health, all of it. And one of the things that we're really facing right now is when we're not living from our oneness, we're seeing other people that aren't included in the circle of God. We're seeing it everywhere. And it's not new. Humanity is, and as a matter of fact, most religions are dualistic, and they say, yeah, you've got to be in the right club or you're not going anywhere good after this. We don't believe that. We don't teach that. And so our invitation is to not otherize, and otherize leads to dehumanization, which leads humanity in very, very dangerous places. We can vote our values, and I encourage everyone. Tomorrow is the last day to register for this election cycle. Check your registration. I want you to vote your spiritual values. Vote for you the way that it feels like this is the world I want to help co-create. But I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm not going to tell you which. If you want to know, you can come talk to me after the service and I'll tell you. I will. But not from here. I won't do it from here. I trust you. But we must begin to live from that oneness. And we can't just blame ourselves out of the mess we're in. When Jesus gave the beautiful parable of the Good Samaritan, do you know how radical that was? He chose the most hated group of people that his audience would have ever known. They were hated, despised, the Samaritans. And Jesus made this man, the Samaritan, the hero of the story, the one who showed compassion, the one who lived from his oneness. And that's what we're called to. Because we don't want to be in that place of separation. We want to be in this place of connection and loving kindness and oneness. And so if we are willing to have our eyes open, even though, I wish it were as easy as just turning on the light and, we're enlightened. It's not quite like that. It is a process of our becoming. And we're going to talk about that in this series too. There is a thing that happens. I shared last week from Richard Rohr. He said, time is a gift. That it helps us to integrate the truth over time. We can't handle big truth all at once. It takes time. So you have time, but we must begin to live from that oneness and begin to shift the way we're seeing it. When we don't live from the light of the world that we are, we see other people as less than. When we do live from our oneness, we live in openness, harmony, positivity, and possibility. This also came from our humor supplier. Some people these days are just too judgmental. I can tell just by looking at them. And when Jesus, the master teacher, told us, don't judge because you will be judged in the same measure, what he was speaking to is as within, so without. And so if you find yourself judging and criticizing others, it's a reflection of your own internal judgment and criticism. And when you see other people who are judging and criticizing others, it is because they are not in loving relationship with the light of God within them. They don't know. And it's often unconscious. They really do think they're the problem. That's the issue, those people. And so the place to begin this work of reconciliation and integration, that we're all in this together and we're all connected to love and to God, is you start here. I've lost a couple of pounds. And some of you talk to me about it. You say, you look good. But you know what I figured out? If you notice when I lose 5 pounds, you're also noticing when I gain 5 pounds. And I've been very sensitive to criticism around my physical appearance my whole life. And I can tell you the story of when that got installed in me at 8 years old, but I'm not going to. And I will tell you this, when in an earlier time in my life, if I gained 5 or 10 pounds, I thought I had committed a huge moral failure. Like my life just lost meaning. Like I was just, look, I can't do this. And what I'm working with now is, I've shared it many times here before, I had a revelation around this a few years ago, that my job is to love this body as it ages. And I want it to look cute, don't get me wrong. I'm single. I want it to look cute. But not to judge and make it wrong as I've done for so much of my life, because that pain that is here, it does come out here. And so I want to be, my dear Maggie Cole, she says, I want to be as available to God as God is to me. I want to create that kind of openness. And wherever I find myself in judgment or self-criticism is to let that stuff go. I didn't almost say a bad word there, I promise. I didn't. The invitation for us to live from our oneness begins in here. So if you can see yourself with kind eyes, you will see others with kind eyes. If you can begin to offer yourself compassion, you will offer others compassion. If you can begin to see yourself as the light of God, you will see others as the light of God. If no one has told you today that they love you, I love you. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.